Black Cat Lounge is sponsored by Beacon, a home for those who have a passion for filmmaking and the unusual. The Haunted Hinsdale House. Those who walk there do not walk alone. Paraware, apparel for the action-seeking paranormal investigator. Dragonfly art and soul for all of your magical, metaphysical, and spiritual needs. Mystery Control, your go-to feed for science, magic, true crime, the paranormal, and so much more. Paraniagara, one of the top rated destinations in Western New York. The Black Cat Lounge is part of the Paraflix Entertainment Network. Everybody, Tim Shaw here. Welcome back to the Black Cat Lounge, where the elite meet next to the dumpster transfer station. And, some people take offense to this. Some people say, well, Tim, you've got a pretty quality show. What's this all about? Why are you going and saying that, the elite meet next to the dumpster transfer station? Here's the 411, guys. Here's the 411. Take the duct tape off your butt and smile, because it's more of a joke. Back in the day when yours truly worked with a union, we used to have our executive board meetings at a place called, you guessed it, the dumpster station. That's pretty much what it was. And it was this little hole in the wall with a little back room, and that's where we used to go. And it was right next to where we dumped garbage. So I always liked that. And it was always a lot of fun, and we always had a good time when we were in there. And I just carry that with me. It kind of warms the cockles of my heart, when you start thinking about that. And that's what's fun. Listen, I want to go and address something that is all over the place. It's really lately, what I find is at this time of year, people are already getting like itchy and antsy, and they're at kind of each other's throats. And let's just kind of like back down a little bit. Back down. You don't have to worry about the drama. Just do what you want to do. That's all. Do what you want to do. Ignore everybody. I love that whole thing. The let them. I like that whole thing. Let them. You know what? Because the only ones that are getting upset are the people who are upset. That's all. Don't worry about it. Let them get upset. And you go on with a smile. And you know what? Think good thoughts. You got to think good thoughts out there, because why? Think about it right now. We're in like a little bit of a crisis, and things are getting a little crazy. So I just want to go and just say to everybody, take a deep breath. Take a step back. And there's a lot more important things going on out there outside of just drama. So we'll just put that in the back. But we got a great show for you tonight. You know what? Tonight I have two of my favorite people. Two. I only have three, and he's probably watching, the third guy. But because Toby's shy. But I got two of my other favorite people on tonight, and we're going to talk about something that, I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to come right out and say a lot of the problems in the paranormal, when people go and see different techniques, automatically they go and assume that these techniques are provoking. And we're going to talk about that, because this technique that these two have developed, I shouldn't say developed, because Dan Husen has had, they did it. Adam Kimmel has done it. The Kling brothers did it on their TV show. They're going to talk about the differences between something that's pretty important: reenacting versus provoking. And there's so much, it's kind of heavy, because a lot of people don't realize that, they will walk in the middle of a session and think that, oh, wait a minute. Oh, what's going on here? These guys are being mean to the spirits. Well, there's a lot of different reasons for it. I've worked, like I say, I've known exorcists, and I've worked with spirit rescue circles and that sort of stuff. And, I think it's been homogenized through TV. I think that everything, and I blame as a child of reality TV myself, someone who's been on a bunch of shows. I blame reality TV for it because of the fact it presents itself in a way that makes everything look evil, but yet it pops. So let's bring on, without further ado, the dynamic duel from the Western Bloc in Lockport, New York, the amazing Heather Grimm and Frankie Bob Kupka. There they are, babies. Hey, guys, welcome. Two of my favorite people and my buddy. Look at this. Toby is in the room. Toby's in the room. That's my third favorite person. So we're all here. So anyway, guys, let's talk about this. Now, I remember, let's go. I'm going to go back before Heather was probably born. And we talked a lot about what we had to do in order to get spirits to cross over, to get some kind of communication. I've talked with exorcists that will say, well, sometimes you have to really be forceful in order to get a spirit, this negative spirit, to tell you their names and be stern. And the problem I've seen is, like, too many people are taking this literally. Too many people go out there and they really go and they're taking it that everything. If you raise your voice above a certain octave, all of a sudden now you're provoking. And so, guys, I'm going to throw the ball in your court. So tell everybody right off the bat what you guys do, why you guys talk about this, and you know what? Kick some butt. That's all. Just kick some butt with it. So I'm going to go and I'm going to throw the ball in Heather's court first, Frank. So I'm first. So Heather, perfect. Give me your opinion on that.
Oh God, you threw a lot at me. Well, first of all, at the Western Bloc, we do a lot of investigations, and specifically here we have, I don't know if you call it techniques, but through working here, we do a lot of role playing, and that's really what led us into deciphering what is provoking versus what is role playing. Because a lot of people, we've heard this word thrown around here and there and everywhere. Oh, they provoke, or you shouldn't provoke, or this, that, and the other. So Frank and I really started diving into what exactly is provoking and how is that different from what we do role playing.
Frank,
I think a lot Frank,
of it. Let me ask you this: we're talking about role playing, and immediately people are like, I don't. First of all, let's everybody get your mind out of the gutters when we start talking about role playing. So I'm just going to put it right out there. So Frank, when we start talking about role playing, what are we talking about? And David, he had a great point about the ripples in time thing that we used to do, and they never considered it provoking. Yet I have heard time and time again that it was, and people condemned me for participating in that stuff. So tell everybody about what this role playing, reenacting, and all this other stuff is, and what you do about it.
So when you take history, if you know your history, so everybody goes to a location and they do some research, right? So you go there and you ask questions. So you're provoking them with questions to elicit a response. Now, to me, that's provoking. You bring a trigger object, that's provoking.
Whoa. Let's back that up. Whoa. Let's back it up. We got to delve into this, because what happens is now a lot of people automatically are going, oh, I just brought this sweet little teddy bear. Correct. And that's not provoking. That's a trigger object. So why would you consider something like that? Like, what you're talking about.
The word itself, trigger, automatically thinks of provoke. Because when you're trying to provoke somebody, you're trying to trigger them into eliciting a response for you. So when you bring a trigger object, whether that's an object, a bear, like you said, it could be when we go on our investigations, or we're in an investigation at the Western Bloc, one of us play a certain role. So now if we're at Mansfield like we were, and I'm playing the role of correction officer or inmate, which I have firsthand knowledge of because I worked in that environment, and I start talking, speaking the language, well, now I become the human trigger object. But because, like you said, my voice goes higher or this happens or whatever, now I'm provoking. Well, there's a huge difference. And I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm going to push it on to Heather in a minute. But the difference I believe in provoking and reenacting is intent, like we all have, and attitude. So if you have the intention of pissing people off and the attitude of walking into an environment going, I'm just going to piss everybody off and I don't care. Well, yeah, now I can get behind you and say, yeah, you're provoking for no apparent reason. But if you're taking a historical event or a firsthand knowledge of something and placing it into the event and you're reenacting what you know happens, that's not provoking. That's reenact. It's no different than you dressing up in the Civil War outfits and go doing reenactments out on the battlefield.
Well, Joanne's got a little comment. Trigger and provoke are the same, aren't they?
They can be. Go ahead,
They
Larry.
can be, but they can also vary. It gets back to what Frank said. It's the intent behind it. And I think what Frank and I do with some of the lectures that we do is dive into what those differences are. When you think of the word provoke, it always has a negative connotation with it.
Right.
But it's simply inciting a response. It's the intent of inciting a response. Same thing goes with triggering. Trigger objects, you're trying to incite some kind of response. Now, that's not always negative. If you have a teddy bear and you're trying to call to a child, is that a negative thing? Not necessarily. If we're going into a prison and we're acting like inmates, depending on your view on that, it could possibly be negative. But I think, it gets down to we need to define really what provoke and trigger is as a general use for the parafield. And I think we just so callously throw around these words without giving a good definition to them and understanding them.
See, I agree with you 100% because what I have over the years, I've taken classes from all sorts of different people. And one of the biggest problems that I've had with some of these instructors is that they are everything's provoking if you raise your voice. B, everything's provoking if you swear. And C, everything is provoking if you're afraid of the darkness. And let me throw this at you. Let me throw it at you. If you're afraid of something negative, should you even be doing this work?
No.
I might disagree.
Okay, right.
We have somebody who started off with us and, he had a few fears. He got over them very quickly, but he was challenged with some very unique incidents. For instance, a flashlight being thrown off a shelf, and he had very swift walking shoes. But, he's an awesome person who, at that time, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, that he was a little freaked out by it. Yet he stuck with it for the purpose of learning more. So it really goes back to no names mentioned. It really goes back to what is your intent? Are you going to run for fear, or are you going to challenge yourself to be open-minded and learn?
Right. And that's a big problem. Go ahead, Frank.
I think the difference is, are you afraid of the unknown or are you afraid of the negative connotation? Because everybody's afraid of the unknown. Everybody's afraid of the dark. So is that what triggered response that day? Because of the unknown that, oh my God, I didn't know that could happen? Or was it because that person really thought that, oh my God, there's somebody nasty here? So you're right. It can go both ways, but I don't know if it's real. If you're really afraid of, and we're demons or devils or evil or whatever, if you're afraid of that stuff, you probably should, because then we all know, then you have that chink in your armor. And everybody asks us, we all know, am I going to take something home with me? Well, if you're definitely afraid of that and you feel that and you manifest that, you might. But if you don't, but if you walk in there
See, you know what? Again, I mean, I knew the late Raymond Buckland. Raymond Buckland was a guy that brought the Gardnerian style of witchcraft here, which now we really consider Wicca, and to the United States. And his philosophy has always been, you've got to make a decision. Are you a practitioner? Are you a worker? Or are you just a fluffy bunny? So what I'm seeing in the paranormal community and we're going down the rabbit hole here a little bit. What I'm seeing in the paranormal community is the bulk of paranormal investigators are fluffy bunnies. Because why? They want to maybe see something, a little something. They want to catch something at EVP. Oh, we got an FU on a recording, and that's what they're looking for. They got their DR60s out there and they're making all these crazy, grindings, and they're matrixing all these noises and stuff. And here's the problem. Listen, I'm not fearless.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the dark. I don't like stuff jumping up, but I'm still cautious. But I can't be considered a fluffy bunny because I'll go head first into these things. I don't think twice about it. And that's what I'm thinking. A lot of the problem we have here when we have the two things going on, the reenacting versus provoking. And I think that's why people see this and they get afraid.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. So, I mean, you have to figure things out. I got a comment from Dave here. Hold on. There we go. If we really think about it, investigating the paranormal is provocation. Exactly. So does that mean they just want us to stop investigating? Good question, David. Good question. Yeah. Maybe, what do you guys think about that?
I guess it all depends on who wants to stop. Does the spirits want us to stop, or does certain people want us to stop? Because, I mean, again, a lot of your provocation stuff, it all comes with who you like and who you don't like. Now, we all know there's that guy on TV that nobody likes. So everything he does is provoking. But when you take the other guy on TV that everybody loves and who does the same thing, that's not provoking. Oh my God, he's such a pioneer. Look what he did.
It's so, but it's so true. It's so true. Now, Heather,
yeah.
How far would you go in reenacting a scene? Because when I think about the reenactments versus provoking, I've been in situations, historic sites, places of great pain and suffering, Civil War hospital sites, places where they rehab, aid stations. I've walked, I marched from Frederick, Maryland to Gettysburg for the 130th anniversary and original stuff. That is like pushing it. That's pushing you to a limit. How far would you go? Would you think that by doing something to such an extent that it's possible to do like a time trip or an interdimensional slip or something in order to go and reach through in order to get a response?
I think it has to do a lot with set and setting. So I am not going to go into a daycare and act like I'm, somebody from the Civil War, a soldier from the Civil War, on the battlefield. It really has to do more with where are you? What time period are you in? What was the behavior of that time period? And what were they doing at the time? Sure, I'm not going to ever hurt anyone physically, but I would go to the extent of reenacting, playing out, going through those motions without ever physically harming somebody else of what was going in that time period. So if it's Civil War, I'd be reenacting as a soldier.
Would you reenact a murder where you went as far as to use a rubber knife or a retracting blade knife to go and push the limitations of what's going on? Would you do that?
I personally would, absolutely. But it's not out of disrespect for whoever we're trying to communicate with. It's about creating that set and setting to put ourselves in that set and setting to break through that veil, so to speak, to bring about, those people at the time that were around, that were there, as, the record of what was going on, to try and elicit some kind of response. And it's not out of disrespect for anybody, certainly, but we've found, through a lot of the reenacting that we've done, when you go through those motions, it does bring about responses. So
now, Frank, how much history, how much research, how about the history of a location or a specific scene that you're trying to trigger a response? How much research do you feel you have to do in order to not only reenact that, but get into the exact mindset? Because now with you, we put you in a prison situation. And by the way, he was on the other side of the bars, guys. He's the guy that had the key. He wasn't the guy that was like put in there. But we'll talk about that later and what Heather did to him. And that's that's a story for a little bit later. But so you've lived it. You understand it. You've been able to go and experience a lot of this, right? So let's say you're going to go and do something at there was a murder in a brewery. How far would you go down the rabbit hole to figure out what to get not only your brain into sync with what's going on, but to be able to describe it to everybody within that I'll just say, call them players, all the players within the scene?
I would go as far as it takes. You're gonna have to so if you're gonna reenact something like that, a murder in a brewery,
right?
You need to get as much information as you possibly can. You can't go in and read one news article and say, "Hey, I know what's going on. I know what happened." It don't work that way.
Oh, is that like watching three? Is that like watching 3 episodes of Ghost Hunters and being able to go and say that you're a professional? Is that what you're talking? Exactly. Is that what you're saying? Oh, who said that? I'm sorry. I love Jason. Don't get me wrong. I love Ghost Hunters. I'm sorry. They were one of the very first pioneers. I shouldn't blast them a little bit, but I get this all the time because it's like, I did my research. Well, how much research did you do? Excuse me. Google AI said, maybe you should sit down and read a friggin' book or something, Google
AI is great, but if you want to research, like you said, get a book. If there was a book written about it, get a book and read the book. If you can get your hands on the police reports, get your hands on the police reports. If it's me and I'm going to research this thing and then tell everybody how it went down and what's going down, you have to have all the information so all the players, like you said, can do their part. Because if they don't have the information to do their part, you're not going to get the correct setting and the correct, like Heather said, you're not going to get yourself in that correct setting to get the response you want. It's easy for us to walk into a prison to do that because I can set the stage and set everything up for everybody. It's not that hard. Follow my lead. It's not that hard. Whether I want to play officer or I want to play inmate, it's not that hard. Follow, and you saw it firsthand. Once I'm in that spot, I'm pushing it to the limit. As far as again, we're going to discuss a little bit later, but the stuff that was happening behind Heather, my intent at that point when it was there was to get it to come all the way through, straight on through past us. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because of other circumstances. Somebody broke the energy, but once I got it rolling and I knew that they were doing that and they wanted to do what they wanted to do, my intent was to get that black shadow to come all the way straight on through by us.
Okay, now let's just talk real quickly about what would you consider provoking? Heather, what do you look? Heather Grimm is one of the leading provokers in Western New York. No, she's not.
No way.
Really isn't. But Heather, what would you consider provoking? What's the line that you would cross? Now, we're in a prison. Frank is F-bombing everybody. He's going into all things. He's acting up, and we'll talk about Mansfield and the experiment we did there.
Right.
But where do you draw that line? Because you know what? We're talking about something that might be fluid in nature. So where would you cross that line?
I think the prison example is not a good one only because so much goes on there and the language is already so vulgar. I think a better example is a daycare, where you're trying to talk to little kids, or like a kindergarten where you're trying to talk to little kids where some kind of tragedy happened. And you go in there and you're laying F-bombs all around and saying, hey, little kid, and you're calling them out and just being so disrespectful and demeaning to these child spirits. I think that is crossing the line and provoking. I don't think going into a prison and being vulgar is crossing the line, because again, it has to do with that set and setting. So there are things that I won't do, but it gets back to where are we? Who are we talking to? And what was going on at the time? I wouldn't act out a murder at a daycare, but I would do that on a battlefield.
Unless a murder took place there.
Correct. Yes, unless a murder happened there. Yep. But I would act that out on a battlefield where that did happen. So,
well, here's something that I want to throw out there. Here's something that, as someone who has, when I was much younger, and I actually had hair. Yes, people, I did have hair, and it wasn't white.
Man, it was flowing locks.
I was beautiful. I was beautiful, baby. I was beautiful. Anyway, in spirit rescue circles, you do anything and everything in order to convince the spirit to go on, including lying. It's almost as if you're in law enforcement and you have carte blanche to say what you need to say to make up a story to try to trip up, the suspect into admitting something. Would you consider that provoking? Do you think that when you're doing that to get that response back, from spirit or energy or whatever, do you think that is provoking, or do you think that is like, maybe I'm just kind of pushing the line a little bit? Or is it all intent? It's the intent of what we're doing.
I definitely think it's the intent. It really depends on who you're talking to. Are you talking to a criminal, in that kind of setting? Or are you talking to a cute little mom, who just died in a sudden freak accident? What are you trying to talk about? Who are you trying to talk to?
Okay, next. Here's something else. Here's something else in my little brain. In my upcoming book, shameless self-promotion, in my upcoming book that'll be published by Dark Moon Press. I'm going to be talking about something that happened to me at a Civil War battlefield. There are actually a couple things. Now, intelligent versus whatever, repeat mode. Do you think that you're getting an intelligent response, meaning immediate response from something on the other side that has a brain that's functioning, or some kind of consciousness that's functioning? Or do you think this is just like a knee-jerk reaction by the universe during a time slip because you've reenacted something and that energy becomes the same? Frank, we'll go with you next.
It's tough because it's, we never know what we're talking to on the other side if we're talking to anything. That's the whole beauty of what we try to do, the whole guessing game of who or what we're talking to or how exactly what's happening is what we're trying to actually figure out. Everybody's trying to figure. I'm assuming as soon as somebody figures it out, they're going to be a gazillionaire. But that's the way it goes. It's tough. I mean, I would like to think that if we're getting intelligent responses, that we're actually reaching out and talking to actual somebody.
Let me just stop you right there. What do you consider an intelligent response?
Answering a question straight out. How many people? 20.
Yeah, we'll talk about that too.
But to me, that would be something that's, you asked the question in real time and you got to answer right back in real time. And it was like, exactly. Oh, all right. Okay. But again, is it that time slip? Are they talking to themselves on that other side and they just hear it and boom, they heard what we said and they just, damn, I would love to think that it is someone that in that environment that we're working in that is reaching out and talking to us, but I can never say for sure.
Next question, directed directly at Frank again. You're not off the hot seat yet there, big guy. You know,
Damn.
hey, I just want to let everybody know this is me getting back at my trainer. Just to let everybody know that I'm getting back at him for all the stuff that he's made me do in the gym. So anyway, Frank, let me just bring this up. Now,
Okay.
we talked about how much research goes into this. Right? Do you think that you could be influencing what's being said out there? What you're getting, what you're collecting, the responses you're getting because you've done so much research? Or do you think that when we reenact something, do you think we should have one person that knows what's going on, really did the research, leave him off to the side, explain to people what they should do, and then let them do it and see if you get the same response? Do you think that's almost like that's almost like using a Faraday cage on a recorder?
Yeah, that would be a great experiment to do. I like everybody knowing a little bit, because you can get the responses you want when everybody knows something. But if you've got one person playing the director, so to speak, telling them what to do, your responses may not be the same as they are if everybody knows what's going on and everybody's, because we all know we all work with energy and vibration, right? So when everybody's energy is working together collectively, like we were that night, our energy collectively working together brought a lot of that stuff up. Yes, mine was very high and very hard, but all of our energies together collectively brought a lot of that stuff out. Now,
I believe that.
If I sat out and just directed you guys as to what to do, hey, Heather, do this, kick that, do this, blah, 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 blah. That energy is not going to be as strong as all of us together doing it as one. So yes, I do think you can do it both ways, but I think the responses are going to be completely different just because of the energy that everybody brings together.
Exactly. And Peg brings up a good point. You know, is it just your thoughts that are getting manifested into reality via the energy transmitted out there? I'm a firm believer in that myself. I really do. I do believe that, because if everybody's on the same wavelength, that's when you start having higher response times. Now, let's talk about a little trip that we all did a little while ago. And as we went to a wonderful place called Mansfield Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. And, I just want to say that, Frank's a lovable galoot, but I'm going to tell you what, sometimes he needs to be punished. Like tonight, I'm punishing him. Well, that night, it was Heather's turn. So we decided that we were going to go and reenact this. I'm just going to set the stage for you guys. We're going to reenact this whole thing. Now, I'm really thinking to myself, well, let's see how far this is going to go. Now, Heather, we can talk about what was it like handcuffing him? He was handcuffed behind his back. What was it like putting him into
have you seen his muscles? They're massive. I needed your help to be able to even get his wrist together to handcuff him.
So I popped his shoulders out of joint in order to get his wrist together. But
you're too far off.
In order to go and really play it up, Heather put Frank into a wrist lock while he was handcuffed, walking him into solitaire, and almost face planted him into a mesh.
Raiding me around solitaire.
So, let's talk about this. Now, we only had planned this up to a certain point, and Frank, of course, he was the guy that really understood what was going on there. What was it like when we did the walk? It's like we were showing you off to the other inmates. What did you feel when you were doing that? Did you get any kind of like sensation, or was it just like, oh, it's like the old days, except I'm on the other side of the wall this time?
Pretty much like a flashback. Yeah, it was the I've been here before on the good side, but I've been here before. And yeah, so it started as you're walking the perp walk, if you want to call it, as
Yeah.
you're doing perp walk, things are starting to, trigger in my head. What am I going to do? How's this going to work? What can we, what can go on? Blah, blah, blah. And at first it was like, well, I'm going to try to do this and try to do that. And it's hard. Again, I knew what the situation was. I knew I've been through that situation, walked people in, put them in the cell, and had them refuse to give me the handcuffs, just like I did with you guys. Been there, done that. You guys have never been there and done that. So it was kind of
right
in the beginning when we first started. It was a little bit difficult trying to walk you guys through some of the stuff because I was trying to get you to responses, and the other person we were with wasn't getting the response that I was getting. I wasn't getting the response that I wanted. So that's when I was like, oh, with this, I'm just gonna flip out basically, and that's what I did. And then I started getting the responses I want from him, which was good. And you and the other kid were laughing like crazy because, oh my God, this is going nuts. And then it was just time to flip the script, and that was it.
Okay. To reset, to just go and set the scene. Frank is behind bars. We made him stay in there in handcuffs behind him. We were on the outside. We had some gear on the inside. We had gear on the outside. The lovely Heather was off to the side, almost like a guard, and we started going back and forth. We started bantering. At any one point, Frank, did you feel that we were pushing, that we were provoking something that was in there? Because we could start to feel energy starting to build. At any one time, do you think that we were provoking it in order to get the response, or we were merely reenacting something that you experienced in order to get a response?
I believe you were provoking it all, because you at one point you finally started to follow the script, so to speak, and you brought up that, shut up and be quiet, we'll take the cuffs off, blah, 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 that type of stuff. So once you started following the script, it was no longer a provocation. It wasn't a provocation from the begin with. If anybody was provoking, I was provoking you to respond back to me so we could get the banter rolling. That's what I was trying to do. So I guess if you want to use the word provoking, yes, but I was doing things to get you to respond back to me so we could start our banter and get our stuff rolling. And once that started rolling, then it was much easier to continue what we were doing, that kind of stuff. So
now, Heather, I'm just going to go and just say, describe what was going on while he was starting, when he was acting up. And just to let everybody know, Frank at one time says, this is what prisoners do when they come off their meds, and they do this 24/7 and screaming. What was the reaction? What was the physical reaction that was going on within that sphere? And I'm going to call it a sphere because the energy was building. So what was going on at that time?
Well, there was really two phases to it. So the first phase was when Frank was just acting like any old prisoner. And we had paraded him up to the cell, and you could already feel the eyes watching from the cells as we took him to the one that didn't lock. And once we put him in there, you could feel just the kind of uneasy but normal prison atmosphere. It wasn't until Frank started challenging the solitary block and inmates in it, saying that this was now his block as an inmate, that things completely shifted. We got a lot of responses. The temperature dropped suddenly, and the devices we had all started really coming to life. I think that the most drastic
and
was
just
that
to break in, Brad Kling, the Kling brothers, on their show, they did something similar that had an amazing response. So a lot of people don't give the Kling brothers the credits and the kudos that they really should, because of the fact that they were one of the first ones that really went out there. And also Brad has got a booming voice. So right away, everybody says he's provoking. He could go, I'm going to tie my shoe. And he's like, people will say he's provoking. And that's the problem with, with the conceptual sensibilities of some of these individuals that are out there. And that's a pain. That's the problem. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Heather. I just wanted to make sure we get Brad in there because Brad was cool. And seriously, their show was ahead of the game. And I'll just come right out and say that the networks treated them like shit because they had something they were really, at that point. They were at that point where nobody else was doing what they were doing. But go ahead, Heather.
Phase 2.
Well, it was when he challenged the whole solitary block. That's when things shifted, and we started getting very directed responses towards Frank. I think before it was more like, all right, who's this dude that's joined our block? Just another freaking inmate. And after he started to be calling them out and saying that he was now the top dog of the block, basically, we suddenly felt the unease and the unsettled nature of the whole block in response. It got a little nuts at that point.
Well, at that point, temperature was dropping. General uneasiness. Shadows were starting to go.
Yeah.
And
we were getting different responses on the spirit box that we had with us.
And the responses now, and again, you know what? I've never been a fan of the spirit box. Never have. I just, it's always, of course, I started on with, the old shack hacks that were just nothing but nosebleeds wrapped in plastic. That's all they really were. They weren't, you didn't have noise gates or anything like that on them. So when we were using the boxes, I realized at that point that there might be something to it. Now we were starting to get real-time direct responses. So tell everybody about what we were starting to get.
So at first it was just your typical response from an inmate. Frank would yell out like an asshole. They would respond asshole back. Pretty much the cat calling that inmate would do to another inmate. It was kind of humorous at that point until he started challenging the block and saying it was now his block. And then the response from what we got on the spirit box turned kind of ugly. It was your typical, you think so? It's not going to be that way.
The one thing that I want to make sure that everybody understands, this was not matrixing. This was deadly clear, wasn't it?
Yes. Yep.
Oh yeah.
So at one point, it seemed like they were trying to, well, first off, we had 2 people with us who hadn't done an investigation with us before. So we started getting some vulgar responses on the spirit box. And then there was a direct threat at Frank. And when it came over, it was crystal clear. And I was a little afraid to repeat what was said because I didn't know how the 2 newbies with us were going to respond because the one already seemed not quite sure of everything going on. But it was crystal clear. And what was said was kill him. They were directed at Frank. They wanted to harm him just because he was challenging them all. And it was really interesting because following that, it sounded like they were trying to identify where he was or where they were going to get him. They started calling out different rooms, different areas that they were going to try to get him in. So it was really interesting how directed and on point the responses we were getting to that were.
See, that is where I went and I thought to myself, okay, this is not just something being repeated. This is not something that's being like a time slip. This is not something that's residual, kind of just banging around. This is something that's direct. and it's directed towards one person in particular, and then it was answering in real time. So tell everybody what else it had to say.
So with the kill him?
How many and all that.
Oh,
and
yeah,
by the way,
yeah.
and by the way, Brad has some sage advice. Don't drop the soap, Frank.
Brad never did.
That's our Brad. That's our Brad Kling. That's why we love him so much.
So we wanted to know, who was responding. We wanted more information. And where I was standing, I could see down to the other end of the block, and there was a mass that was just, for lack of a better word, amassing darkness.
Like a black mass,
and before we could get the whole sentence out, how many are you? It had already told us 20. So it was really interesting that, we were asking very specific questions and we were getting very specific answers in response.
Now, while all this was going on, Frank, were you consciously reenacting, or were you just opening up the door of your own experience and letting it just like blurt out? Because the reason why I'm asking this is because if you're reenacting, sometimes you're pulling back, you're holding back. Now, I've had the time trips, doing the reenacting and doing all this stuff where all of a sudden you're like, bang, you're back then, and you're back there, and then you're back. Well, that sometimes is the flight of imagination. Do you think that you were starting to imagine things that were going on, or do you think that when all of this was going on and you were reenacting, you actually became intently, manifestingly in that dome of yours, you became a prisoner that was in solitaire?
Yes. Yeah, there was no holding back. Once the reenactment was 100% real from 100% firsthand experience. So I opened up and let it have it. That was true to life. What happens, what they say, how it goes, and I just didn't hold back. I took on the persona. I guess if you want to look at it that way, I took on the persona of that inmate that was in that cell to do what I had to do.
Peg's got a good question. How many prisoners could that cell block hold? I'm going to be honest with you. I can't remember, but it had to be like 10 on one side and then 10 on the other side, or I can't remember.
I want to say the side that we were on had 30, because if you start from the front of the gallery and come down, there was a split in the middle, and remember, it went straight all the way down. So I would say probably at least 30 inmates, I would say, on that side of the gallery, and then 30 on the opposite side. So that's usually the way it works.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. While this was going on, Heather, I got to ask you, what was your perception of what was going on? Were we getting? Do you think that at the time, now we would go and we have some gear to be able to go and measure this? But do you think at the time we were starting to get a lot more? We were starting to get static electricity or things like of that nature was starting to build up. Ions, maybe. Was there a shift in barometric pressure? We had a 17-degree drop in temperature where, it was chilly as it was, but while we were doing this, you could see your breath. What was there something that you could feel, physically that was going on during this time period?
You mentioned barometric pressure. I have a rare headache, and it is triggered by air pressure drops or changes in the barometric pressure. And I had a wicked headache that was started because of that sudden temp drop and the change in the pressure. And I only get the headaches when that happens. So that was really interesting to me because that was a physiological effect to what we were doing. You could feel, in your body, the presence of the energy shift, but without the devices that were available, like the EDI, it's very hard to really quantify what we were feeling and what we were experiencing. Yeah, we saw our breath suddenly. We were fine before. So that was a shock. That was a physiological thing that we were able to observe. we can, biasly say all these experiences we have, but I'm kind of bummed we didn't have all the equipment we have today to be able to really gauge all of that. So I'm excited for us to go do it again.
No, it's
with all the devices we have.
It's interesting. These are things that, see, I think my biggest problem that I have with paranormal teams and paranormal investigations is, to me, they're flat. You go in there, you ask, who's here, blah, blah, blah. And you're just sitting there and you're not being a participant. How important is it to be a participant versus just sitting there, allowing stuff to just flow over you? Because I do know that there's positive things on both sides. But do you guys think that perhaps being an active participant more than just somebody sitting there, asking questions or wandering through or maybe broadcasting or whatever, do you think it's more important to do something of that nature?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because that's why I started laughing, because I saw that.
It's our buddy John.
I do absolutely believe that it's better to be a participant than to just sit there, because, again, collectively, all of us, there was 5 of us that I remember, all of our energy together collectively started working together and building things. If you, and you know yourself, you do this, when you do your seances and whatever, if you have one person that just sits there and is not really intent on doing it or into it, it kind of, it doesn't ruin the entire experience, but you don't get the experience that you want, because
exactly
not everybody's energy is working in coordination together. So yeah,
exactly.
If you're going to go do something like this, don't be a bystander, get into it. And again, where can you go, whether it's paranormal or something, where you can just feel free to be yourself and just, say whatever you need to say, but at that point in time, if I'm in the cell and going and I'm smacking the walls and kicking the bars and doing all that stuff I was doing, and you guys we're just kind of standing there like, not yelling at me to stop or this, that energy wouldn't have built. That energy wouldn't have formed together. It would have been me trying to do everything all at once, and it's not going to get us what we want.
Now we're running out of time already.
Damn.
So I'm just going to go and I'm just going to say that it ended in most seances, they call it a bubble, and it's an energy bubble, and it builds into what's going on, the reaction of what's going on. What happened was, this was very similar. Everything was going on. You could kind of feel electricity in the air. And 2 people came in because they heard Frank outside the prison walls yelling. And so they came in to see what was going on. And by them entering into the atmosphere, it went and it just died. And you could feel it just collapse. It was like a bubble, like a balloon just collapsing. Yep. So that's a big thing. So, I think, and to wrap this up, I think it's really important that people really embrace reenacting and not worrying about it being provoking. And I think the problem, again, provoking is in the mind of the beholder, and too many people will go and they just think that, provoking is, everything is evil and the poor spirits. Well, some of those spirits ain't so poor. You know what I mean? Some of them deserve what happened. So anyway, guys, listen, before we go, Heather, what's going on at the block? What are you guys doing? And and I've got your logo, or I got your website up on top. How can I get a hold of you guys, and what things are you offering?
We are doing our drop-ins coming up, our guided tours. The building is available for private hunts for all the teams that want to just be unleashed on the property. It's a good 100,000 square feet and a whole lot of fun. But if you guys want to come investigate and we don't have something scheduled, get a hold of one of us. We do try to periodically do pop-ups. So we'll also be starting up our kids hunts in the future. And then we've got a bunch of paracons coming up that we're going to be attending.
So we're going to make sure we do that. And guys, stay on the line. Thank you guys for being on here.
I got one last thing to say, Tim.
Do it, baby.
When you're doing reenacting and you're doing your investigation, don't let anybody telling you do it wrong. Everybody does it the way they want to do it. Don't let somebody say, I don't believe in that, or I don't condone this, or I don't do this, or that's just wrong. It's not wrong. You do your investigation the way you want to do it, what's good for you, and don't let somebody pigeonhole you into what they feel is right. If you feel it's right, go for it and do it.
I agree 100%. Guys, thank you. Stay on the line. I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
This is a thought-provoking and really hot potato article, and that's concept and topic. I wanted to go and bring it to you because of the fact that I get hit with it all the time. Oh, well, you're a provoker. You do this, you do that. Here's the bottom line. Sometimes you have to go and push the envelope in order to get the response that is needed. If you're going and, like in my case, many times when I used to have to go out there and be cleanse a place, or we had to go and cross something over, or whatever, in spirit rescue circles, sometimes you had to do that. You had to be a little rougher. You had to be a little coarser. It's not always provoking, guys. Provoking is intentional, and it's just downright nasty. To do it for a higher purpose, that's not provoking. Speaking about a higher purpose, we're going to be back next week. You've been listening to Tim Shaw. My guests are Heather Grimm and Frank Kupka from I'm sorry, I was going to say Hotel Paranormal, but no, from the Western Block, Niagara. And guys, you've been listening to the Black Cat Lounge, where the elite meet next to where? The dumpster transfer station. Guys, be cool. Ciao, babies. Take care. We'll be back next week. Bye-bye.